The major labor management dispute in the United States you may not have heard about. Over the weekend, an overwhelming vote against a new bargaining agreement, a new contract presented by the Deere company. That's John Deere, as it's been known for 184 years. Around 90% of John Deere workers, the agricultural equipment giant, represented by the United Auto Workers, they rejected a contract proposed by both parties, labor and management, sending board chairs and union executives back to the bargaining table today. The deal included higher wages, some increased benefits for the more than 10,000 Deere workers, but it also asked workers to agree to cuts in overtime pay and a 20% increase in health care premiums, along with more flexibility for management to close plants in America. Workers have now set this Wednesday as a deadline to go on strike if their demands are not met. So we wanted to talk about this, a major story. Jonah Furman, who's staff writer for Labor Notes, kept his finger on the pulse of the labor union movement in the United States, joins us now. Jonah, thanks for being with us, and thank you for your coverage. Like a lot of people, I've depended on Labor Notes and on your Twitter feed as well, because it feels like you've really got a good feel for this. So first, tell us what's at stake here. What are the issues that this is about?
Sure. I would say the biggest issue here is a classic case of corporate earnings outpacing worker earnings. So it's a raises issue, it's a pension issue, it's a healthcare issue. Ultimately, this company is in its most profitable year on record, and workers feel that their wages and benefits are just not keeping up.
That's a great point. John Deere headed for a record year. They're going to make 5.7, 5.9 billion. That's a lot more than previous record in 2013. And I noted that the CEO, Mr. John May, he got 160% pay raise to $16 million. So that must be fueling it. But it is a big step, isn't it, Jonah, to actually decide to walk out. So we're looking at a Wednesday deadline. There were a lot of people who thought that under the gun, the union rank and file would validate this contract. You predicted they wouldn't. So what do you think is going to happen this week? Are we looking at a strike, do you think?
I think we are. I mean, of course, I don't have the crystal ball, but talking to members and what members expected to see in a deal versus what the UAW leadership brought back for a vote and what Deere clearly was thinking they could pass, they're so far apart and the timeline is so short. If you also look at the numbers, it was a 90% no vote on a contract that was recommended by the union. So the union was saying, we suggest we accept this deal. 90% of members said no, and turnout to the vote was 90% or something around that. We also saw a strike authorization in early September, which is somewhat of a formality, but it was a 99% yes vote, which is, you know, you see these votes 90%, 91%. It's a show of force. And it also means there's just thousands and thousands of Deere workers who aren't ready to settle for, you know, seemingly anything close to what the company has on offer and what the union thought, you know, would be adequate for the members. So I do think we could expect to see a strike starting midnight Wednesday. Yeah.
And that would be huge. We're talking upwards of 10,000 workers. And I wonder if you can put this in context for us a little bit. For a long time, obviously, the labor movement in the United States has been battered. Strikes almost disappeared, it seemed, as a feature of labor management relations. But now we're seeing across the country more and more. Do you think this is an example of a nationwide push by unions, not just to get better wages and benefits, but actually to relight the fires of solidarity, if you will? Do you think that's what we're seeing?
Yeah, in part. I mean, you know, it's hard not to overstate it. We're looking at levels of strike activity that are comparable to the mid 80s, which no one says is, you know, the heyday of, you know, working class fighting. But on the other hand, it's been decades since we've seen this much activity. I think a lot of what we've seen is a tight labor market. Inflation is rising for, you know, the consumer price index, and companies just have been getting away with concessionary contracts, as we call them in the labor movement, contracts that take away more union rights. And they sort of haven't adopted to the moment of the post-pandemic frustration that workers are feeling. So it seems to me that it's clear there's something happening in the private sector that we haven't seen. We saw the teachers in 2018 and 2019, a few large strikes. The GM strike was another UAW strike in 2019. But for the most part, the large strike activity has been centered in the public sector, in K-12 organizing. And now we're seeing some of that energy, which was on hold during the pandemic for some obvious reasons, has built up and is clearly, these workers are not ready to settle.
And the workers do have the upper hand in a tight labor market as is. So, John Deere, as we said, Deere company is having a record year, but they say that they are really pressed by this cutthroat international competition, and really every company is competing, not just in America, obviously, but around the world. Do you think there is that makes sense? And is there a middle ground then between what Deere is searching for to allow it to do business in this cutthroat competitive world and what the workers want?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty laughable if you speak to workers directly, the idea that Deere is struggling or having a hard time. We're used to concessionary union contracts happening during financial crises when companies cry poverty. Right now, you just look at the numbers for Deere, and it's just not the case. They can't hire new workers because they're not paying starting wage high enough. Even the pension plan that they're trying to eliminate for new hires is well-funded and funded by financial income from the company. So this is really not a case of the company being squeezed and the workers wanting to, get a bigger piece of the pie. There really is a bigger pie here. The pie has grown, and Deere has not adjusted its negotiation tactics because I think they can, get away with that, which they have in the past. But
sure.
Clearly the mood has changed among the workers. And
then the mood may have changed in the country. We haven't had this kind of conversation in a long time. I recently brought the Deere issue to the White House press office. Asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki about this very dispute, specifically when it comes to the equitable distribution of company profits. So here's part of the exchange I had with Jen Psaki. Is the president of the administration on top of this? Are they aware of that labor dispute? And what's the president think in general of companies like John Deere raking in the cash, spreading it around to top executives and investors, but not to workers?
Well, as a policy and for legal reasons, we don't weigh in on individual labor disputes. So let me say that first. And there have been others in other cases. We, of course, are aware of this particular case. I will say, broadly speaking, which I think you were also asking me about, yes, the president is deeply concerned when he sees companies making record profits, padding the pockets of CEOs, and expressing concern about paying a little bit more so that we can invest in our workforce, invest in cutting costs for the American people, invest in the climate crisis. That's deeply concerned. That's one of the fundamental reasons he thinks we need to make the tax system more fair, and believes that companies can do that without passing on costs to the American people.
So she definitely switched to the president's policy agenda. But Joe Biden considers himself a union guy. That's his record. Do you sense a change in the balance of forces because Joe Biden is in the White House? Is he leading on these issues?
I think it's kind of clear from that answer that he's not leading on the issues. Really is no reason he couldn't support the workers more vocally in this fight. We also are in the middle of a 6-month-long coal miners' strike in Alabama that, Joe Biden has certainly not led the way on. So I think we could see a lot more from a pro-labor administration. There was good comments around the Amazon election in Alabama in the spring, where the president tacitly encouraged workers to support the union or to feel empowered to support the union. But I think there's a pretty big gulf here between what workers think the responsibility is of, Joe Biden or any sort of government actors to reduce inequality. You can generally support reducing income inequality, but if in no particular instance you're ready to speak out, workers see that and hear that.
Rubber meets the road there. Jonah Furman of Labor Notes and at Jonah Furman on Twitter. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.